if you look at the XP, what is the main characteristic of the XP?
Straight programming, you mean? Like,
Yeah, what is the main?
multiple resources.
Okay, you already got the ball. So XP says that you're better off to have two people working and coding on one computer at the same time. And one is a driver, and one is a navigator, a person who checks the code. And it's really proven that you have a much less errors when you work in such environment than if you work in a standard environment, like you code for 2 weeks, and then you try to integrate to see what's going to happen. Okay? So pretty much, as you can see, the same concept. They have iterations, they have release plans, etc., etc. This is what I talked at the beginning. You have a project, requirements, you break requirements into functions. Nobody mentions scope, statement, or anything like that, even though you may have documents like that, but really your focus is on functions and user stories. And the definition of the user story is what? User story is the experience, your customer experience with the project output. That's a user story. There is nothing technical about it. I don't want customer to tell me I want database with 150 tables. No, I want you to tell me your experience that you want to get out of this out. All right, let's go back now to tools and techniques. Okay, lock up the door. Okay. So, tools and techniques. Payback, you all know these tools and techniques. Payback, net present value, discounted payback, customer value prioritization, minimum marketable feature. Guys, you're familiar with these tools, right? We already talked about minimum marketable feature. What is that? Minimum marketable feature.
You want us to answer? It's the least I can get away with in you buying the product.
Do you have both?
Yes, you want it
Okay,
back?
no. Right. Good. No, that's the bare minimum of what you can sell to the customer. Well, I ordered hamburger. Well, it's okay, we just have it right now. Just pay it and come tomorrow. Okay? So, what is the reason behind this? Why do we want to sell immediately? If you go into traditional management, you work, you sell, and then you get paid. And this process of working, releasing, and getting paid can be a lot longer than it should be. But guess what? In Agile, if I release small increments and they're functioning, that means you owe me money for those small increments. That means that you get faster cash turnover. Your cash flow is faster. You obtain cash faster. You burn less and you get less, but you get less sooner, which can keep you throughout the project. Are you with me? That's the reason. Actually, that's the main reason why they have, one of the main reasons why they have small increments in work. Another tool that I like to point out is a value analysis. And you remember I said you have functions, and these functions are supposed to be prioritized from customer, right? By the customer. The customer will prioritize functions based on a value that they perceive from the functions. So I know when you go to the sales meeting and you say, well, how many of these features you want? And they say, oh, well, that's not going to happen. So which of these is most valuable to you? Which one you cannot live without? Okay? So that's what we need to do in the value analysis. I'm sure you're familiar with this. How many of you are using value analysis on your projects right now as we speak? You don't want to talk to me. Why? Okay. Guys, this is a key if you want to make your salespeople listen to you. You tell him, hey, these are the functions, and these functions have different, customer has a different perception which of these functions is important to him. And also there is a different cost associated with every function, and you have a limited budget, so based on that constraint, let's pick and choose functions that you can benefit from. So you start prioritizing right there your functions for your product backlog, your sprint backlog, based on a cache that's available to the customer. Okay, now let's move into planning. I already mentioned that we look at the scope and we dissect scope into functions and we describe functions to user stories, right? So here is the user stories. What do you need to include? Story, name, ID, description, who is the end user, you want to place the guy who requested the feature or function. You see, like in Agile management, we go in that micromanagement both ways. We track down performance of the team on each basis, but we also track down requirements from the customer on each basis. So if you request something that's later dropped from the list, then there is a question, why did you request in the first place? So there is a pressure throughout the stakeholders community. Excuse me. When you look at the user stories, when you build user stories, you need to follow invest approach, which means that stories should be independent, negotiable, variable, estimable. They should be small in size and tastable. You need to be able to taste it. In a perfect world, each story would create some output that can be useful immediately to the customer. In a worst case scenario, all stories put together at the end of the sprint or iteration should deliver something that's useful by customer. Those stories that are ready to use are called to achieve done status, D-O-N-E. So when people say it's done or done, that means it's developed, tested, and it's ready to be used by customers. It's already released. Also, user stories should be specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, and timely. Small, okay. How are we doing so far? You want to go home? I know. All right, good. So here is the story. What is the user story? Your experience with the function, and you need to explain that experience. I don't want people to say, I should be able to log in. You should be able to log in, but it doesn't need to be secure. People can break easily, right? No, you need to say, I want to be able to log in securely. My login should be stored in an Explorer or whatever you use, Mozilla, etc., etc. So you need to explain that experience that you will have with the output. Now, in situation when we have a team, but we don't have expert customer present, we can build something that's called personas, roles, actors, or whatever. In other words, there is a function, and I would connect that function to an end user. And end user is online customer XYZ. I don't know that guy, but I can imagine that guy. So you ask team to write down about that imagined customer that's supposed to use this function. We do that because we don't have a feedback from end users. That's why I say, as soon as you see the project coming, you should get team together so they can start dreaming about the project. They can also, this type of communication can also provoke customers to get involved, because often, more than none, customer doesn't know what they want. What do you want? Everything. What's that? I don't know. So, extreme customer play. With personas, again, you can pretend that you are end user. I already mentioned extreme customer. What is the extreme customer definition? Unlikely user of your output. So in a worst case scenario, if I build this feature, I should cover 99% of the market. So Agile, again, came from Japan, and they also use a lot of the Lean Six Sigma tools and techniques, like a Kanban. What's a Kanban approach? But that's how they build even ERP packages. Back in 50s and 60s, Japanese developed a container assembly line. So if I'm working on an assembly line and I'm using parts from my container, at the moment when I reach the safety level, I will turn the card, red card usually, that will signal somebody in inventory that they have to bring parts to me so I can work, to continue work, right? So here is my container, and this is what I'm building. This side is actually another backlog or list of the functions or user stories, features that I'm supposed to build. As a team, I would pick and choose outside that list, which is already prioritized by customer, what can I deliver in a first iteration of sprint. And I can estimate throughout the sprint, usually throughout the project, usually they say you can estimate for 2-3 sprints ahead, no more than that. Because they're really against traditional management, you can plan for it out, right? So the changes are relevant all the time. So what are the things that I want to know? I want to know how much of the capacity I have available. So I have 3 hours a day, hard work person, 5 times 5. That's 15 hours a day of labor I can use. And then I want to see how much of the work in progress is estimated for these user stories or functions. And then I can calculate how long it's going to take me to deliver. All right, second, we already talked about the burn down chart. This is called ideal burn down, which means that every day you deliver the same amount of work, which is a perfect world. Often due to the changes, things that we learn, that we know, we don't know, that line will go up and down. Okay? What happens if it's the end of the sprint and we have 2 user stories that are not done? What do you do then? You have a ball, right? Okay, you have a ball. Okay. The rest of the guys don't care, or you want a ball, man? This is like a tennis pen. You play tennis? All of you in good condition. Good. All right. Now, I said burn down chart. Burn down chart will tell you how much work is left. Burn up chart will tell you how much work you accomplished. Okay. You can also combine burn up chart with some risk analysis. I don't want to chop into that now. Another tool that I would like to recommend is called Little Law, or cumulative flow diagrams. In this scenario, they say that how soon, how fast you're going to benefit from the project output is directly related to how much time will take you to build that output. Are you with me? So if I'm waiting to build the entire scope for the deliverable based on traditional management, it's going to take you 3 months. But if you want to wait 1 month, I'll give you something which is not everything, but you're going to use. So based on that scenario, using Agile, we can track down and see how much work we have in progress, how much is a cumulative work for entire sprint or iteration, and how much is left. So in this scenario, we plan to deliver 660 points or hours of work. So far we accomplished 400, and we are doing 120 as we speak, this sprint. So when you compare these two, you can see we are behind schedule. Our project is still running, actually. It's not completed, right? I need you guys. This is completed. This is what we're doing right now, work in progress, and this is how much we're supposed to do. Now, these uneven ups and downs will tell you that something happened at this point, and that's why we're behind schedule. Because if we're on a track, this line will be straight. Okay? All right, just a tool. Let's go to Agile analysis and design. Okay, wireframes, also known as a GUIs. In other words, when you start talking to the customer, you may start drawing or trying to make some mock-ups for the customer to see, to make sure that you're on the same page in terms of what's requested by the customer. Once I come up with and I reach agreement about the functions and how they're supposed to look like, we can outline release plan for the entire project. Now, let's say this is more in terms of functions, right? So you can run release plan or roadmap. Roadmap is for like a year. A release plan is like up to 6 months. And then you can have a sprint plan that could be like a 1 sprint, no more than 2-3 sprint plan. So you break down the complexity from roadmap plan, release plan to sprint plan or iteration plan. These tools, by the way, are used on a walls, which is called information radiators, because they are open areas. They don't believe in cubicles in Agile. We knock down cubicles so people can communicate all the time. And they post this information all over the office so people can interact with the project on their own, so they don't need to bother others. Another thing that they recommend is that you don't use PowerPoint presentation with slides. They recommend that you communicate through post-it notes, flip charts, and markers. Especially post-it notes, that you put comments on your own, so people can add to your comment, etc. If you're using a software, or let's say you have a place at server that you dump your files, sometimes people cannot add their comment. If you keep this in a common area, people can write post-it notes and keep communication going around an issue without interrupting other people's work. I find it very useful, especially when I work with research and development teams, because engineers, they don't like to talk to people. That's why they talk to computers. So don't bother them. Okay. This is task board. Again, you take your product backlog, you make a sprint backlog, and this is how you represent your sprint backlog, or within iteration. It doesn't matter which one you use. So I have priorities here, I have ideas, and then I can set up order or sequence in which I'm going to complete this. And then also at the given point in time, I will see which of these user stories or function is done, released, in testing, etc. Please note, all of these are post-it notes on a wall that you can move by hand. So I'm done with these tests. I'm done with the testing. I'm going to get another test unit that's available. I'm going to test and I'm going to move. All of that is self-managed. You don't push people. You're not supposed to push people. They're supposed to be doing that. Because at the end, what will happen is at the end of the sprint or iteration, it is supposed to be clean. Modeling is basically developing mock-ups of the screen design or whatever you're building. You don't want to give a complete architecture immediately. Let's draw some kind of draft, and if you accept that, then we're going to go to the diagrams. In terms of estimating, agile estimating, how many of you heard about planning poker? The rest of you don't talk to me. Please do what you do. You see, let's put it this way, you are stuck with me and I'm stuck with you there. Alright, now here is if you can go to the next PMI meeting, well, it's not fair because there are like a couple of people who are agile. But if you can provoke communication between traditional project manager or Six Sigma guy and agile guy about accuracy of their estimating techniques, you provoke and you just sit and listen. That's experience. Think this goes. Agile is all based on experience, current experience. So let's say if I'm in a bad mood, I'm going to do 3 hours support today, or this sprint. Next sprint, I'm in a good mood, I'm going to work overtime, do like about 15 hours, right? But in traditional management, you say, I want you to get done regardless of your feelings tomorrow, right? So when you estimate traditional versus agile, you may see that agile is more loose in estimating techniques. This is what they say. If you start a project, whatever happened in the first 3 sprints in terms of how much work you can get from the team, that's going to happen for the rest of the project. And that's how you project the cost of the project. That's how you project duration of the project. For example, if one sprint is 30 days, right? Listen to this. So 30 days, right? And we have 15 hours per day, right? So a level of effort that we can get is 15 hours per day. So we can deliver 450 hours per sprint. You agree on that, right? No cheating, I'm not lying to you, right? Now, guess what? You talk to an expert, and he says, hey, dude, that project, I think, is at least 5,000 hours of work, based on my experience. So total level of effort is 5,000. How long is it going to take you to do this project? For an agile manager, it's very easy. 5,000 divided by 450, that's 11 months, or 11 times 30 days, which is 330 days. So he would say 330 days. And if there is a traditional project manager, he would say, based on what? That doesn't make sense. And then agile guy can ask him, how often do you deliver on schedule? And that's conversation that I was listening, I don't know, people. So that was something that you can experience because both sides have right and wrong. What I like with Agile is that you focus on getting things started. you don't focus on getting numbers right, because numbers do not deliver. Customer pays by feature, function that you deliver, not by correct numbers. Okay, I know, don't hate me, I'm also PLP, etc. Okay, now relative sizing. We're going to run one exercise. Just give me a second. Relative sizing is when you have to estimate how much work will take each of your stories to do. Let's say you draw stories. I need to develop. People are supposed to upload videos so people can comment. I need to have a blog, secure blog, etc. So, how many hours or points will it take me to do one feature versus another? How do you estimate it? Here's the key, one or two. You can look at all of the functions and user stories, and you can start from the lowest in terms of effort, or the highest, or medium, and then you can compare rest of them against them. The best concept, I saw that concept a couple of years ago, and I think it was Cockburn Alistair in book. Forgive me if I'm wrong, but one of those books, read those books when they're useful. He gave very good example. He put up like a list of countries, like India, USA, Belgium, Germany, Italy, Rwanda. And then he would say, based on the population size of each of these countries, assign points to each of these countries. So let's say we don't know geography. What is the best thing? You start with things that you know. So which country is most populated? India. So what is the key now? To have a range that they can use. And one of the range that they recommend, and I recommend as well, is Fibonacci algorithm. You're familiar with that, right? It starts like a 0, 1, and then 1, and then 2, and 2 plus 1 is 3, 3 plus 1 is 5, and then 5 plus 3 is 8, 8 plus 5 is 13, etc. And you can go as much as you want. So you build this range that has some differences, so you can really make a significant difference in estimating one user story versus another. So the team has that luxury to estimate what's complex and what's not. You build it, and that's how you estimate user stories. Now think about this. This Fibonacci algorithm is actually representing hours or points of work that you can do for your user story. Do you see the picture of this? Only 2 says this, the rest of them say G. I can be more. Alright, very useful tool. You can actually, even in traditional management, you can estimate work. As a matter of fact, I use it a lot. I told you about that story on a critical path. I look at the critical path activities to see why they are critical. How come it's taking so long? And I want to compare that type of work that's on a critical path activity with something else that's similar to it to see how different they are. Is it really 2 to 3 times bigger to do one thing versus another in terms of time? So I want to point out and see where we're standing in terms of estimating tasks that we have to do. I strongly recommend that you do that. We can also use Wideband Delphi. I'm going to do that in a second. Or Planning Pocket. What's a Planning Pocket? For those who want to make the job more interesting, you bring the cards and you give cards to people. And you tell them, okay, pick 1, 3, 5, 8, 13, and 14. And then you pick user story and you say, okay, tell me how many points or hours of work is this user story. And people will write in post-it note and give it to you. You will reprocess and you can conclude on your own, or you can ask them, you will present the data and then let them see what other people think without intimidating each other, and let them repeat the same process until they come to the same number or they reach consensus. Are you with me? Now, if you have people in Yale like me, there is no way that you can agree with me ever. So you use White band Delphi. What is this? It's kind of a mute approach. You take a user story and you tell people to give points. Take a post-it notes and tell me this particular XYZ user story, how many hours will take. And people post in the first round their position. They don't talk, by the way. Nobody can talk to anybody. Okay? So they go sit, and if it's a right spread like this, you ask them to repeat again. And they repeat again until you reach consensus. What is the key here? Consensus. So I have to correct myself. If I'm not sure that 21 is correct number, then I'm going to change. If I'm expert and I know it's 21, then I'm going to stick here, and you will have that separation that will allow you to start communication. But it's much easier to talk about 2 points of data than to talk about whatever 8 estimates that we may get from different people. Okay? You can also use affinity diagram to estimate user stories. So what is the affinity diagram? You put all the user stories on the post-it notes, and then you let people, without talking, group those user stories that they have something in common. And then you estimate those user stories. So that way, you're asking people to develop standard. So every time I'm building login, it's going to take 3 hours or more.
The last one there, asking to prioritize. Are you prioritizing the group or the stories within the group?
2 things. First, I group stories based on their common ground, right? And once this is already prioritized. You see, this, I did prioritization with the customer here, and I did my sprint backlog here, and these are the things that I'm going to do within the sprint. Now I want to see how long it's going to take. You can look from that perspective. Are you with me? Okay. The key here is that from random tasks and user stories and functions, you want to group them so the same people can start estimating the same amount of work. I mean, the same tasks. All right. Now, how do we communicate? I already mentioned about the daily stand-up meeting. 3 questions. What did you do yesterday? Nothing. What you going to do today? I don't know how I'm supposed to work. And is there any risk? No, everything is good. Let's move forward. So, we talked about retrospectives, information radiators. What are the information radiators? How would you define information radiator? Can I say it? Sure. Go ahead. Information radiator is a common area within your company that you use to publish data related to your sprint or iteration. End of story. Now, team space. I already mentioned in Agile, there are no cubicles. They develop and believe in something that's called osmotic communication. What is it, osmotic communication? I always hear what other people say, and then you jump in and you say, yeah, I think you're right. We should do this and that, etc. So in other words, you allow free flow of ideas among the team members. As you can see, not everybody can fit in such working environments. I even saw companies with Agile who have a bed in a room, so if you're tired, you can go and sleep. Seriously. Okay. Here is all about the information radiator. Why is a radiator? Radiator means heat. So when you share the heat, that information radiator should kind of bring people who feel cold and lost in projects so they can get closer to the radiator and obtain some information from the project. It's all about that. And if you take a look, the face-to-face is the best way to interact with the team members because you can see their feelings, emotions when they talk to you, etc. At the same time, since you interact face-to-face, you should limit duration of that interaction. That's why they have a limitation of daily stand-up meetings, 15 minutes, sprint review meetings, 2 hours, sprint planning meetings, 4 to 8 hours, etc. What is the coldest one? Paper. Anytime are you going home? You got
10 minutes.
Then done with you or 10 more minutes? All right, good. So what is the most important thing? Listening. Communication is the most important thing for project managers. We know that. But to be able to listen and understand what people want to tell you, that's rocket science. I don't have that. I'm gonna sit down. So, you have internal listening, when you listen and think what people say, focused listening, like what you really mean by this, and then global listening, you know, like I'm listening what you're saying, and I'm also listening at your body language. Like you say, yeah, Mike, you're great, but every now and then. Okay. Now, in the process of communication to reduce conflict, most of the conflict comes through verbal, right? So to reduce verbal engagement, they develop these tools to communicate and to answer questions not verbally, so using these signs. So anywhere from I agree to I disagree, right? So that's why when you say like this, I go all right. Again, all of these tools, guys, Agile is focused toward building a very flexible, fluid environment where you waste energy to build things, not to argue with people. So any tool that they can do to reduce conflict, they would use it. Problem-solving techniques, there are a bunch of tools that we can use here, and we almost there. This is my favorite one. When I run projects, I would say what are the tasks that are critical, and I'm going to say owners of those tasks, and I'm going to point out owners who cause delays on the project, not because I hate them, but just to tell them that they make my life miserable. So here is the reason why we delay. Because I know in a real world you don't want to mention name, but I like to mention name because that's the only way you're going to stand up and do something. And of course you can call me and say, Mike, I disagree with that. You should be putting my name there. And I said, sure, I'm sorry about it. What do I do? I put his name again if he's on his heels until he delivers in time without errors. So take a look. These are within your sprints, and every time you have an issue, in those daily stand-up meetings, you facilitate. You don't argue about technology. The guy says, I'm late because of this. You write it down and you speak it. At the same time, that's defense for the team member why we can be late at the end of the sprint. So it's not like I'm making fun of the guy. No, I want to help him so at the end of the sprint we can look back and learn something. What is the most expensive error? The one that you repeat all the time. You can use graphical analysis and you can use little line charts to project timelines, etc. Again, you can group them based on resource, based on user stories, department to see where the errors coming from for different analysis. Another fancy tool that you can use to obtain feedback from the team is 5-5-5. So you ask 5 questions and you ask people to respond 5 times to those questions. At the bottom line, they say if you, actually there is another tool called 5 Whys. If I ask you, if you tell me there is an issue, and I ask you 5 times why, after you answer the first time why, at the end of the 5th one, you will be able to tell me the real reason why you have a problem. So I'm late on this feature. Why? Well, I didn't read the scope well. Why? Nobody told me why. That's how you dig to the bottom of the issue. Now, let's say if you want people to go to the retrospective and see which of the issues was most critical one, you can allow them to participate by putting dots. Again, anonymous participation, it's a painful process, but nobody gets hurt, except those who read. You see, like, I'm not doing anything wrong, I'm just saying I think this one is a very bad issue. It's too bad it's your name next to it, but that's why. You can also use smiley faces for the same thing. Same approach if you want to find out what are the good things within your project. So you can use post-it notes and you start discussion, you ask them, write down what do you think what's a good what happened in this project. And then people can take it and communicate around the issue in a certain way. This is like you gather information about each team performance. within each iteration, and you build the baselines for them. And you compare, and you want to see who are the overachievers, who are people who don't achieve. In other words, you want to set up kind of standard. You want to look after best resource. You want to be like the best resource. I'll see you too. You can establish a baseline. I like to use baseline so the team comes. In Agile, you don't tell how many hours of work they can do the user story. You don't tell them. But what I can tell them is to build kind of baselines and tell them, hey, based on historic records, this is what I have seen in the past. So people can, I'm not influencing your decision directly, but I'm telling you that we know that this can be done in this range of points or hours. I like this tool as well. This tool is basically separating what was good and what was bad, and what was done good, what was done bad, etc. We all know what's brainstorming and what about you. How do you call this tool?
Great.
Who doesn't have a goal?
I got it.
You have a, who said it? Nobody was told. Good, I'll take it. Ishikawa, who said it? I thought you were going to play it. Okay, good. You need to practice that move. But here is the beauty of Ishikawa, guys. Now when you told me causes for this, I really know what is the sub-cause. Because, let's say, you can say we hire wrong guy. Mike Mark is the wrong dude. He wasted 3 hours of our time. Actually, it's not Mike Marco. He didn't come here by himself. Somebody brought him here. And that's the cause and effect analysis that you want to go for. In other words, explore this and go into more details. Again, this is done in a public area so people can go back to the seat, write it down and come back and post it. You see, that's why you want to create this environment that people can come and interact with this all the time. Now, you can, again, going back to group stories based on a background, like this is like a stories related to testing, planning. I like this tool. I do this at the end of the sprint, even deliverables and traditional management. What did you do right? What we are going to repeat? What we're not going to repeat? Very, very simple tool. In a risk management, some of the tools that we use from risk expected, monetary value, probability, and impact, you can apply to Agile as well. We combine this with risk burnout chart as well. Now, how does it work? Let's say I have a historic records. Based on historic records, now I have to adjust, considering risk factor, I have to adjust my sprint. So previously, sprint was estimated to be 100 points, for example, user story. But now I know I'm dealing with a Mike Marco, which is very risky person, so I'm going to, based on historic records, I have to bump this into 120 hours. So that user story is not going to take me 100 hours. I have to adjust for the work environment, and it's going to take me 120 hours. Okay, that is pretty much how would you present data to your student. We're almost there. Emotional intelligence, understand your feelings, self-manage your emotions, self-organize yourself, and then things will kind of fall into place. So you need to spread the culture, like a 5S or 6S scenario that they're using, etc. Collaboration, adaptive leadership, you have to be open. When I came up with that scenario, open matrix, that I can walk in the vice president office and say, I want you to do this. That's kind of environment that's pretty much in Agile. Servant leadership, what is that? You remember those leadership styles, directing, delegating, coaching, supporting, etc. Servant leadership is basically you serve your team. You are facilitating, you're providing what's needed for them to move forward because they self-manage themselves. I already mentioned the signature and velocity. Those are the same things. One is used for pretty much the same thing. One is used for Scrum environment and another is velocity. Nothing else but throughput, how much you can get out of your team. and team has to tell you how much they can deliver. Here is a signature, I mean, kind of histogram that you want, line chart that you want to build. Same with the velocity. What is the cycle time and waste value mapping analysis? I'm sorry. What is the value stream analysis? When you look at your processes, all processes are needed, but some processes will add value directly to the customer, and some of them will not. You want to measure and see how much of that process is really value added and how much is waste, and if you can remove that waste. Lean, this is from Lean Six Sigma, and it's part of the Agile. Agile also have on value management. They don't report on money, they report on points or hours. Remember that story if I say, I'm going to deliver 5,000 hours of work in 11 iterations. So take a look. Let's assume I'm doing 10 iterations. Each iteration is 500 hours. That's 5,000. If I am at 4th iteration of sprint, and I have a total of 10 sprints, based on Agile, my plan value is supposed to be 40%. If I'm in a 4th iteration, I'm supposed to finish 40% of the work. So you can imagine a traditional project manager who make everything based on money in terms of plan value management, that you will be very confused with these estimates. This video would be available to you to review this slide. Do you want me to explain all of this, or we can just move forward? It's a plan. It's the same concept. Plan value actual is really what you deliver, and that's how you find out cost variance, schedule variance. In terms of quality, they are big on validation. That's why they do testing. They do believe that you should use, let's say, NextP. There is a test-driven environment. What is that? First, you write test plan, and then you write the code to fail as soon as possible against the test plan. So by doing this test plan, do, etc., you're making sure that you catch errors sooner rather than later. Because at the end of every day, you integrate the code. So very likely, if you follow this approach, you would integrate zero error code at the end of the day. Because you're not going to release, you're going to test your system unit, your software on the unit as well. Okay, we talked about the value stream. Continuously integrate and improve. We talked about that. And questions? No questions, no. Yeah. Questions?
Quick question. I've worked with Agile on a couple of small projects, but two of the main problems I've seen are when you don't have dedicated resources on your project. It becomes very difficult to actually manage a sprint. And the other thing is when you have a geographic dispersed team, where you don't have those face-to-face interactions, it almost makes it, you lose a big aspect of Agile. So how do you deal with those, or should you not even approach Agile as a project?
Well, let's put it this way. If your CEO says, hey, we want to deploy Agile, and that's what you're facing there, you either say, yes, sir, we are deploying Agile to the best of our knowledge, or you leave company. So if you have a mortgage, don't leave company. Stay there. It's a lot of times like that. But here's the thing. Finish that project, and then pull back and say, guys, what we have done here is a chaos. It's mess. It doesn't work like this. And then you can apply changes. And what are the changes? Even those are virtual teams, they can be part of the project, the video conferences. If you don't have resources for the project, that's not the Agile. If you don't have resources who are dedicated, if he tells me 3 hours a day, I'm going to count 3 hours a day. If he cannot guarantee 3 hours a day, I don't have a project in Agile. Thank you.
What kind of projects are suited for Scrum versus Agile?
Let's put it this way. In my opinion, those are the same frameworks. It's a minor difference how you look at them. That's why I said PMI is doing very smart approach when they say that Scrum is part of Agile. So the only difference is in terminology. You know, like it's the same approach. Agile was developed for service industries and Scrum as well, but now I can see that it can be applied to other industries as well.
Yeah, I'd like to add to what you said. We face almost the same challenge, but in addition to that, what we also face is we traditionally have the waterfall methodology, okay? And then here comes the new project.